You're listening to the Fibromyalgia podcast with Tami Stackelhouse, episode 12. Welcome to the Fibromyalgia podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stackelhouse. And today I want to talk with you more about why saying no can mean saying yes. I talked a little bit about this in episode 9, just a couple episodes ago. I mentioned it briefly in the context of self-care, but it's such an important concept to me that I felt like we needed to take a whole episode to talk more in depth about this idea. Now, when it comes to treating fibromyalgia, I really feel like there are several different areas we have to address. Number one, in order to feel better, we have to find the right treatment options for us. There really are things going wrong in our bodies, and we need to find the right treatments to help make that better. The second thing we have to look at is our own self-management strategies. This is everything from watching what we put into our body, how we move our body. It comes into some of the life hacks and the tips on how to live easier with fibromyalgia. Some things like the tips I gave in our last episode about how to travel when you have fibromyalgia. And the third aspect that we can't ignore is our mindset. What we think, how we think about our bodies, how we think about ourselves and our illness, and just our attitude and our mindset, how we manage the drama. So those are the three aspects that I believe you have to really manage and address and truly have, in order to manage your fibromyalgia in the best way possible. So this podcast is actually going to cover all three of those areas. There will be times when we are talking about treatment options. There will be times when we are talking about tips and tricks and how you can manage yourself. And then there are also going to be times like this episode where I'm going to talk about how you manage your mind and how you manage your attitude and how you think about your illness. Now, when I talk about my fibromyalgia, you'll notice I almost always say it the same way, and there's a reason for that. So what I usually say is, first off, I almost never have body pain, which is true. On a day-to-day basis, just like wake me up in the morning or randomly like send me a text message and say, hey, do you have any fibro pain right now? My answer is going to be no, I actually don't. But I can't say never, because sometimes I do. It almost always happens when I sleep in a bad bed at a hotel room, but it does happen. And sometimes I overdo it, just like everybody does. And usually, like I said, it has to do with traveling. For me, that's where I push my boundaries a little bit too close to the edge sometimes. And that's where I often experience fibromyalgia pain. So I can't say I never have pain, almost never. I also say that I have enough energy to do the things that I want to do. And I do specifically say it that way for a reason. I can't say that I haven't have enough energy to do anything and everything in the entire world. There is no way this fibro body is going to climb Mount Everest. We talked about that a couple episodes ago, using that as our example for why you might want to hire a coach. If you want to climb Mount Everest, you want to find somebody who's climbed Mount Everest before to show you how to do that. This girl in this fibro body, honey, we are never climbing Mount Everest. And that's okay. I don't want to, right? I do not want to run a marathon. I do not want to do a whole bunch of other things. And some of the reason I don't want to is because I know it won't make me feel good. It would be like somebody who has celiac, who cannot handle eating wheat, who can't have gluten, who becomes very, very ill when they eat gluten, saying that they just don't want to eat bread. Like the idea of that is just repulsive to them because they know it will make them feel sick. That's the way many activities are to me. It's like, I have no desire even to do that. It doesn't sound good. It's nothing that I want to do. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't some things that you want to do that I don't want to do, that we need to help find you ways to do that. And that is totally fine. So here's where this idea of saying no so that you can say yes comes into play. We've talked on this podcast before about how I kind of see energy in a similar way as I see money. You get a certain amount to spend for the day, and when it's out, it's out. You can sometimes borrow from tomorrow, but there's always interest to pay, right? The same thing is true with fibromyalgia. You only have so much energy. And if you borrow from tomorrow, you will end up paying for it more. So sometimes what we have to do is say no to things so that we can give our body the space to heal. This actually came up recently in my class, the class of fibromyalgia advisors to be, where I'm teaching them all of this great knowledge and how to be a fibromyalgia advisor and go on to be a fibromyalgia coach. One of the things came up was the idea of travel, which I discussed on our last podcast episode. And the thing is that so many fibromyalgia patients, my students, my clients, me, I used to be in this place, not as much anymore because I've worked really hard at it. But it's very natural to try to push yourself to do all of the things that you want to do, you feel like you need to do, the obligations that you have, or even pushing yourself so that you can help somebody else. Right now, as I record this, it's May, and it's there's all kinds of fibromyalgia awareness things going on. There are a lot of fibromyalgia advocates who are pushing themselves really hard this month because we are trying to get our communities to understand what fibromyalgia is. We're doing fundraisers to help with education and research. We are doing events and we're pushing ourselves hard. But at the same time, you can't do that always, or you're never going to give your body the chance to heal. So imagine that you break your foot. You break a bone in your foot. This happened to me a couple years ago. I kind of stepped off of a curb wrong, twisted my ankle. Didn't hurt my ankle at all, but I actually had a crack in one of the big block bones in the middle of my foot. And I had to wear a walking cast, and I had to, try to keep my weight off of it for a while. But imagine you broke your foot badly, worse than I did, and your doctor told you you really you can't put any weight on this. You need to stay off of your foot for a few weeks to give it a chance to heal properly so that you will be good to go. What if you didn't take that rest? What if you kept walking on your foot like you always did? What if you pushed yourself through the pain, through the fatigue? What if you pushed yourself to keep going anyway? How well do you think your foot would heal? There's a good chance that you might actually end up with foot problems for the rest of your life because you didn't take the time to rest, to stay off of your foot, to give it a chance to heal properly. The same is true with everything else with your body. Our bodies need rest to heal. It doesn't matter what it is. I was actually just talking with a friend of mine about diabetes, and we were actually talking about food and how your body actually needs rest from food. We call that fasting, by the way. Your body needs rest from food to heal, for your cells to heal. Now, sometimes this is as simple as just you don't eat while you're sleeping, right? But sometimes that means more. So, what are you doing with your fibromyalgia to give your body the rest that it needs in order to be able to heal? Are you giving yourself the space to heal? Or are you trying to continue on in the exact same way, at the exact same pace, doing the exact same things that you did before fibromyalgia? Are you basically walking on a broken foot? Now, it can be really, really tough to take a step back and say, no, I can't do that. It can be super tough, right? It's so easy for fibromyalgia to feel like an enormous taking away of things where we can't do the job we used to do. We can't do the activities we used to do. We can't eat the foods we used to be able to eat, right? Sometimes it can feel like everything is just going away. Um, but we've got to do that little mindset shift where we realize that we are doing it for a reason. It's not being taken away to be taken away forever. The idea here is that you're going to purposefully stop doing things for a short amount of time. And short with fibromyalgia is not days or hours. Short with fibromyalgia sometimes actually is years. But the idea is that you stop, you say no so that you can say yes to other things or say yes eventually in the future to doing that same thing again. So, a few episodes ago, I talked about the joy list, and I suggested that you start making a list of the things in your life that bring you joy. Now, in our next episode, I'm actually going to walk you through the full joy list worksheet with all of the how to add things back into your life. So, we'll be doing that next. But for now, I just want you to sort of bring back to mind that list that you've been creating, the things that bring you joy, the things that you want to do, the things you want to spend your time and your energy on. If you're spending your time and your energy on other things, then you won't be able to say yes to those, right? So you might have to say no to something else in order to heal. You might have to say no to something else in order to say yes to the things that you really want to do. So, again, just thinking like energy, like money. What do you want to spend your energy on? What do you want to spend your pain free moments on? What do you want to spend your clear brain time on? When I was writing my book, that was time that I needed to have a clear brain. So there were lots of things that I said no to while I was writing my books so that I had clear brain space to be able to write my books. So there were groups that I was a support group leader at the time. One of the things that I did was step down from being a support group leader. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be here talking to you guys now. So sometimes saying no to something in your life makes the space for you to be able to say yes to something bigger and better later on. One of the things my dad always told me, and I can't remember if I've said it in this podcast before or not, but he used to always say that it's not that hard to choose between good and bad. What's hard is choosing between good and best. And I think that that is so true. And when it comes to fibromyalgia, we have been given the gift of, and yes, I do mean gift, we have been given the gift of being aware of the fact we can't do everything. We've been given the gift of having to choose, which means we have the gift of making those choices count. So many people in life just go through their lives without really being aware of the choices that they make. And so many people get to the end of their lives. You hear these stories all the time where people get to the end of their lives and they have regrets. They have regrets of the things they wish they had done or regrets for the things that they wish they hadn't done. But they basically, it all comes down to the choices that they made throughout their lives. And they get to the end of their lives and they realize they wish they had made different choices. With fibromyalgia, we have been given the gift of being aware of the choices that we make. So you can choose to make those choices count more. You can be more conscious of the things that you're choosing to do or not do so that you can create the life that you want to have. This is about so much more than just managing your energy. This is about choosing who you spend your time with. It's about choosing what kind of a legacy you want to leave in your life. This is about choosing whether you want to spend your energy making the world a better place or just existing. When it comes to spirituality, it even includes that, how you choose to live your life and what you choose to believe as you are living that life. Fibromyalgia gives us so many gifts. And I think the gift of having to make choices is my favorite one, to be totally honest. If it wasn't for fibromyalgia, I would have I wouldn't be here at all. I wouldn't be talking to you guys. You would not have my help, right? For obvious reasons. But not only that, I would, even if I had become a coach, I wouldn't have been as aware of the fact that I couldn't help everybody. With fibromyalgia, I know I have limitations. I know I can't do everything. I know I can't help everybody. So that means I get to make the choice of who I want to help. Just most recently this year, one of the things that I have decided to do, because again, I know there's only so much time in my day, there's only so much of me to go around. One of the things that I have decided to do is for many years, I have not been taking one on one clients because I was spending my time teaching other people how to become coaches. So I was duplicating myself so that I could help more people by spending my time training new coaches, right? So I could expand my reach. But over the last few years, I've realized how much I miss working one on one with clients. And so, just in the last 6 months, I've decided to take on just one or two private clients to work with directly because I love it so much. And this is a choice that only would have come out of the fact that I have fibromyalgia and I know I can't do everything. So, where do I want to spend my time? And also realizing that I get to make the choice of creating the life I want and spending the energy that I want, that I have on the things that are going to create a life that I want to live, right? If I was somebody who didn't have fibromyalgia, it might have been easy to think that I could do everything and maybe not do everything all that well because we all have limitations, right? But with fibromyalgia, I know I can't. And so I'm more conscious of the decisions I make. So now that I've given you an idea of this concept of saying no to things so you can say yes, which is really all about the power of your ability to make choices, right? It's the power of making choices. I want to do a little bit of coaching for you. So, some of the things that come up when I talk about this with my students and with my clients is number one, how do I say no? Right? There's all these people who have these expectations of me. Maybe you're in a job and, you can't just wake up one morning and say, no, I'm not going to go to work. Well, you could, but there's consequences to that, right? Um, and maybe there are people in your life that are expecting you to do certain things, whether you've committed to doing them or it's just, standard expectations, right? Like your family, if you're a mom, your family might just expect you to do the laundry and do the grocery shopping and make dinner. Um, that may just be a natural expectation at your house. So, how do you go about saying no when there are all of these expectations? And that can sometimes be a little bit tricky, right? There are some things that you can do, like if there's new things that come up, once you become aware of this idea and really internalize the idea that saying no to something means that you can say yes to the things you really want to do, then you can assess things as they come up and decide whether or not that's something that you want to do, right? So I read an article years and years ago that I loved. It was right about the time I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia and starting to realize that there was a limitation to what I could and couldn't do. And the article basically said, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. So when you hear about something, whether it's a concert you might want to go to, or a friend invites you out for coffee, or a talk that, in my case, somebody might invite me to speak to their group. If I don't hear about that opportunity and think, oh, yes, absolutely, I want to do that. If it's sort of a, yeah, maybe, then it's a no, because I want my life to be full of the things that are, hell yes, I want to do that, right? So that is one way you can make decisions as things are coming in, as new opportunities are coming up, you can assess those. If you aren't very good at saying no, one of the things you can do is just like train yourself. And when I mean train yourself, I literally mean like practice this in front of the mirror so that when somebody asks you, it automatically falls out of your mouth. You can say, I'm not sure. Let me look at my calendar and let me get back to you. It gives you an opportunity to step away, truly look at the bigger picture of your life. What else is going on? Literally look at your calendar, see what else you've committed to, and decide whether or not you want to say yes, rather than being put on the spot to say yes or no immediately. So just like practice that. I'm not sure. Let me check my calendar and get back to you. So that takes care of the new things that are coming up. The other thing you can do is to start making some default decisions up front. And I think I've mentioned this briefly in earlier podcast episodes. But in my story, I mentioned how I could only leave the house about once a week. So that was one of those default decisions that was made up front, that once a week, I'm leaving the house. If something comes up, I've already committed to doing something during that particular week and something new comes up, it's either an automatic no, or I reschedule it for a different week where I don't have anything else going on, or I can choose to reschedule the thing that's already booked in there. But I can't book two. Like it's not allowed. Right? Today, one of the things that I do these days is Wednesday is my self-care day. So if a work thing comes up and it's on a Wednesday, I know that my default answer is no. It's like Wednesday is not an option. It's like I'm out of town every Wednesday or something, right? Like it's just not an option for me to do that on Wednesdays, because Wednesday is all about going to the chiropractor and, taking care of me. So take a look at your life and your calendar and figure out what some of those default decisions can be. That way you don't have to think about it in those moments when you have brain fog. You can either say, let me check and get back to you. And then you can say, oh, yes, that's right. I already made the decision. I was only going to do things like this, once a month or whatever it might be. For those things where you've got expectations that are already expectations or commitments that you already have on your calendar, and you have to sort of untangle yourself from them, those are trickier. And one of the things that you can do with that is give people lots of early warning. So, as you are assessing your life, your calendar, your energy expenditures to make sure that you're living within your energy budget and that you're saving energy for your body to heal. We talked about that in earlier episodes, that your body needs energy to heal. So, we want to make sure that we have energy left over at the end of the day if you want to feel better. If you're happy with the amount of energy that you have, where your fibro symptoms are, by all means, go ahead and keep spending all the energy that you have. But if you want to get better, you've got to save some energy for your body to use in healing. So for those things, you need to start reassessing. Like, I would go back and look at your entire life. I would look at all of your commitments, and I would look at, is this something that is supporting me feeling better? Is this something that adds joy to my life? Is this a hell yes for me? Or is this something that I am still doing because I used to do it? Or is this something I'm doing because I feel like it's got to be done and nobody else is going to do it? We'll talk about that in a minute, because that's not true. And so you want to go back and reassess everything. If there's something that you feel like, this is no longer serving me, this is no longer a good fit for my life, then what I would do in those circumstances is go to the people that you are reporting to. Like, so in my case, with stepping down from the support group, I would talk to my co-leader. I would let the support group know, things like that, and say, hey, this is a change that I have to make. And, give them a month, give them 2 months, give them 6 months, whatever it is that you feel like you need to give them a deadline, and tell them when you will be stepping down. Just like if you were to give your notice at a job, right? You would give a 2-week notice or whatever and say, hey, I'll train my replacement, but here's my last day. Now, back to that idea of we sometimes do things because we feel like it's got to be done, and if we don't do it, nobody else will. The thing is, guys, nature abhors a vacuum. There may be people who aren't hearing that or feeling that little tap on the shoulder saying, hey, you really should do this, because you are doing the job, right? So just using, support group, for example, I'm not saying this is what happened in mine, but just using it as an example. Let's say you're leading a support group. There may be somebody in your group who would be an amazing support group leader, or who would be amazing at taking over portions of organizing the support group. But if you don't stop doing it, they will never know that they need to step up. If you don't step down, there won't be any space to be filled, and nobody's going to step into that. We actually did this at my church years and years ago for the church leadership board. There was a group of people who just kind of had always been part of the church leadership. And we used this idea of discernment and calling, right? Like being called to step into something. And if the space is full, then nobody's going to hear the call to step up and take that space, because there's no hole to fill, right? Like, you can't see that there's a need because there isn't one yet, right? So not until you stop doing some of those things are some people really going to realize, oh, I'm supposed to do that, right? Like, whatever your beliefs are, whether it's, God calling you or the universe tapping you on the shoulder or whatever it is, right? Like that idea of being called into something and that being your purpose to fulfill that, right? But if you keep doing the things, then other people won't have that opportunity to step in. Another thing that's part of this saying no to say yes has to do with asking for help. And again, these are things that I talk about a lot, and I talk about it a lot because I believe it's so, so important. In the last episode, when I talked about travel, I talked about asking for assistance at the airport or asking for assistance at the hotel with your bags. And the thing is that there are a lot of things in life that you personally do not have to do. Whether it's asking for help from somebody in your house, whether it's paying for help, whether it is, I have a friend that I love seeing her post. She's in the process of moving right now. By the time this comes out, she'll be moved. But I love seeing her posts of, hey, can somebody come over and help me? I know it's not easy for her to ask, but I love that she does ask, because so many times in life there are people around us who would love to show their love by assisting, but they just don't know what it is that you would need help with, right? Um, if you've ever read the book, The Five Love Languages, helping is one of those love languages, both to give and to receive. So be aware that sometimes it is actually a gift to others to be able to help you. Now, I can almost hear your voices as I say that, because I can almost hear you guys, some of you saying, but I asked for help and nobody will help me, or the people around me just don't care enough to help. And yes, that can sometimes be a challenge. And that is a whole nother podcast episode that we will absolutely get to, because there's things that we can do both in how we ask and who we ask and when we ask. There's so many factors, so many things that we can do differently that can increase the chances of somebody offering us help. But that is another podcast episode that will come in the future. So for those of you who are sitting there listening to me talking and thinking, but you just don't understand, I want you to know, yes, I do understand. I am just choosing to talk about that in a different podcast episode, because we're already, half an hour in, and I need to start wrapping up this episode. So back to this idea of saying no so that you can say yes. Saying no sometimes is very emotional. Sometimes for some people, it really feels like a failure to say no, or to say, I can't do that for you, or to step down from something might feel like you are admitting defeat or something. And I want you to shift that mindset. You may need help shifting that mindset, like depending on your history, depending on what's happened in your past, depending on the challenges you're going through right now in the present. You may need help from a counselor or a spiritual advisor or a coach or a friend to talk to. So if you need help with this, and if there's anything we can do to help you with that, I encourage you to reach out and schedule that complimentary consultation with one of my coaches to be able to have that conversation and say, gosh, I am really struggling with saying no. How do I do this? Reach out to, a friend or your pastor or a counselor or somebody, right? When you can shift that thought in your mind to, it's not about saying no. It's never about saying no. It's always about saying yes. It just might be about saying yes to something else, right? So if my husband were to call me right now, like right this very second, if my phone was to ring and he said, "Hey, do you want to go to the movies tonight?" I would tell him no. The reason I would tell him no is not because I don't want to go to the movies. I totally want to go see Avengers with him. He hasn't seen it yet. I have. It's killing me that he hasn't seen it yet. So, yes, I want to go to the movies. But right now, today, I need to go get packed for another one of my trips for this month. I need to do laundry. I need to start my packing list. I need to, so that I'm not up too late to like go catch my airplane in 2 days, right? So it's not about saying no, I don't want to go to the movies. It's about saying yes to packing and saying yes to getting enough sleep and saying yes to feeling as good as possible while I'm on my trip. I can always go see the movie another day. Even if it was something that couldn't ever be done again, it's always like you're always weighing things on a scale. And what is it that you really want to do? We used to talk a lot about this in my support group about some things being flare worthy. There are some things you're going to say yes to, and you know it's going to cause you pain, and you know you're going to have to rest for days afterwards, and you know it's going to be hard, but it's worth it. You can always say yes to those things, but just make sure that you're making the right choice for you, that you aren't just automatically going with the flow and, doing what people expect of you without you making the decision for what it is that you want to do and the life that you want to create for yourself. And again, if you need any help with this, we are happy to have that conversation. This is something I work with a lot with my private clients. I talk a lot about mindset. I talk a lot about shifting that idea from saying no to things to choosing to say yes to something else instead. This is something that we work with our clients on a lot. We also work with you on increasing your capacity, on helping you feel better so that you can say yes to more things, right? Like that is absolutely part of the picture. We help you figure out the treatments that are going to help you feel better. We're going to help give you all the tips and the tricks and the life hacks so that you can do more. But we're also going to help you make sure that you're making the right choices, that you're doing the right things that make the life that you want to have. All right, you guys. So next episode, I'm going to dive into the joy list with you. So before you listen to the next episode, I encourage you to go back and listen to previous episodes. I'll look it up and I'll put it in the show notes exactly which one it is that you should listen to before next time if you haven't. And you'll also want to go download the joy list worksheet. I'll remind you guys all about this at the beginning of the next episode. But if you can do it ahead of time, that will save you a little bit. And we will actually go through the joy list on the next episode. I will walk you through that. In future episodes, we're also going to be talking about the Family Medical Leave Act and how that applies to fibromyalgia and potentially to your life if you're working. We're also going to talk about getting special work accommodations to make working with fibromyalgia easier. I have a special guest that's going to join me for that. One of my coaches, Julie Hamilton, she has worked with the FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, since it was created. She was an HR director and manager for over 20 years. She is now a certified life coach, a certified fibromyalgia coach, a certified youth life coach, and this is her area of expertise. So we're going to have her on to talk through all of that with you from an HR and a fibromyalgia perspective. And we've got lots of goodies coming up for you. And as always, every 10 episodes, we have our Ask the Coach, which is our Dear Tami episode. This is where I take questions sent in by you, the listeners, just like Dear Abby does. And I answer those live on the podcast. So if you have questions, if there's things that you're wondering, please send them in. Just go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com and you'll find the Ask the Coach option under the contact menu. And just send in your questions. And we will give you answers to those questions by email when you send them in, because, every 10 episodes, that's actually several months apart. So we don't want to keep you waiting. So we'll send you an answer, but then if your question is chosen, we will also answer it live on the podcast. So for today's show notes, just go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com/12. That's the number 12, 1-2. And you will find all of today's show notes, the transcript, the video, and even some fun little quote cards. If you guys haven't been out there, be sure and go do that. We make these cute little pretty Facebook memes, Pinterest memes that you can share with quotes. And there may be some from today's episode that you might want to pin just to remind yourself of why you may need to say no to some things so that you can say yes to what it is that you really want. All right, you guys, thanks for hanging in here with me, and I can't wait to see you on future podcast episodes. Bye.